Greetings, everybody. Looks like we're live tonight here from Fredericksburg, Texas. And I think we're going to just kind of, hang out for a little bit and shoot the shit and shoot the breeze until people start to come on over and become a part of this live experience. Hey, there's Heather. What's going on beyond astrology with Heather? 8 o'clock, that's my time. Unless, of course, there's been a major time shift. There's Judy. Hey, there's Sally. Hello, Sally. Been thinking about you lately. How are you? Looking forward to our interview on Tuesday. Uranus and Taurus. That's right. My dear friend and former student who is now a wonderful astrologer unto herself, Miss Beyond Astrology with Heather is going to be interviewing me. There's Suzanne Potter Thomas. I love that name. That's such an important sounding name, isn't it? Suzanne Potter Thomas. That's an author's name. That's a writer's name, Suzanne Potter Thomas. You should be writing Suzanne Potter Thomas. There's Madeline. Hello, Madeline. All right, we're starting to see some people arrive. Jasper is sitting right over there. Totally love to write a book. Well, you should start to write a book before the books are gone. That's my 2 cents. Jasper will be making his appearance, I'm sure, sometime soon. He's just waiting for the most opportune time. So I'm just going to give you guys a bit of a runway tonight and get into some astrology for some of you early arrivers here. The astrology we're going to cover is the chart for the missile shooting. Hey, what's going on, Joe? The missile shooting or the missile arcade in Syria. So if you want to play along at home, here's what you want to do. You want to go to astro.com and create a new chart. And whenever I create a chart at astro.com, I actually like to use like a male or female for the chart. Because if you do an event, you can't do like synastry or you can't do midpoint composites. It won't let you. But I like to. So break the rule and you can say, well, the event is a woman or a man. In this case, because it was missiles, I chose a man. Seemed appropriate. So why don't you go ahead and do that if you're interested in doing this tonight. And the time of the missile attack is around 4 a.m. Syria, Damascus time, okay? 4 a.m. Damascus time. So you want to create a chart, 4 a.m. Damascus, and it was Friday. It was Friday the 14th, right? If I'm not mistaken. So Friday the 14th at 4 a.m. Damascus time. That's what you want to put down. So let me just go ahead and I just need to edit mine a little bit because it was Friday the 13th here in this country or at least the U.S., but it actually took place on the 14th because it was 4 a.m. on the 14th. So why don't you go ahead and do that, and then we can begin to dissect that chart tonight. It's a pretty important chart because a lot is trying to be determined and fleshed out, and as you know, that's kind of a big deal around these parts where we sift through what's taking place. Chiron and Venus are still conjunct right now. There was like last week where Chiron and Venus were actually conjunct. Hold on a second. Where's Venus? Venus is at 26 and Chiron is at 26. So they are conjunct currently. So they're almost exact. Wow. This could be a really healing time in relationships. You should take advantage of that. Maybe over the next 24 hours. Are there any bridges that you need to rebuild with that Venus conjunction with Chiron? We'll talk about Chiron tonight as it relates to this Syrian event. We'll also look at the chart of the moment, which is up and happening right now. And as we speak, we are at the final degree of Libra on the ascendant for tonight's show. Probably by the time that we get up and running in about really about 10 minutes from now, it looks like we'll probably go Scorpio 0 to kick off tonight's show on the ascendant. And I think I'll probably look at a few birth charts tonight, but let's see how it goes in terms of our time, in terms of our energy, and everything else that's happening. Okay, we got about 20 people here. Suzanne, I use astro.com. Astro.com. And that's also known as Astro Deans. Just go astro.com. And if you haven't signed up for an account, I recommend that you do. It's, I think, an incredible resource, really, really great resource that allows you to do up to 100 charts of different people, and you can play around with things like astrocartography and midpoint composites, and I think you get a lot of bang for your free buck. And of course, there's also astrological columns and stories and pieces that people write. Hey, there's Lynn, all the way from Panama. What's going on, Lynn? Nice to see you. Saturday was the 14th. That's right. Correct. It is the 14th. So it happened here in the U.S. because it was about 9 o'clock at night, Central Standard Time. AstroSeek is awesome too. Okay, we have AstroSeek that's added. I will put I'm going to check out AstroSeek. Thanks, Fabiola. So yes, 9 p.m. on Friday night was when the notification came across. I'm eating avocados I grew. Wow, that is so cool. I love that. Eating avocados that you grew. I'm going to get a garden together out of my deck. Although I'm limited now that I'm doing this kind of paleo thing with what I can eat. It's really limits the palate. Paleo is not palate friendly. Oh, we got another interloper tonight. Can you see her? There she is. Not Jasper. Jasper left. Yes, I know. I know. I know. Did you say 4 a.m. Damascus? Yes, that's correct. It's 4 a.m. Damascus on the 14th. Can't do it. Okay. If you can't do it, that's okay. I'll just continue to run the narrative. You know, see, you're the dog, and I think I'm going to get a dog. I think I'm going to get. It's been a long time since I had a dog. I had a dog in from 87 to 2001. 2001. 87. He was an Aquarius. He was the best dog ever. It was great. I think I'm going to get a dog in the year of the dog. Yeah, I think I want to get. You know what I want? I want a blue healer. Hey, Aylin, how would the cats be with that? Yeah, I think if it's a puppy, I think if you introduce it as a puppy, I think the cats might be okay with it. So yeah, my dog was totally an Aquarius. You know what's really interesting about Aquarius dogs? They do this when you're talking. Blue healer. Yeah, that's what I want. I want a blue healer. I saw one the other day. He was hanging out in the back of the truck of a pickup truck. He's just hanging out there. That and they're perfect size, 35, 40 pounds max. But Aquarius dogs will listen to you. You talk to an Aquarius dog, they'll go like this. So I think that's on the horizon. I'm ready. I'm ready to drive down the highway with a blue healer sticking his head out my passenger side window. I have a Gemini cat. She's completely insane. Yeah. Gemini anything. Thank God for Geminis, right? I mean, what would the world be without Geminis? Pretty boring place, really. Gotta love the Geminis in this world. Well, they're not easy to hang out with at times. Not easy. Okay, shall we get into like some of the astrology for the night? You want to do that? Eileen says, I have an Aquarius pup. She is Portuguese, Padingo, constantly on the move. Hey, Shari. Shari's showing up. I can't post a link with a blue healer. My cat is not easy to hang out with at times. Yeah, well, no, Gemini. We just have to love the Geminis. They're brilliant and fun and frustrating and high maintenance, and they're all that. They're all that. She loves me 1 minute and scratches me to shit the next. Isn't that Gemini? That is totally Gemini. Loving 1 minute and then hating the next. It's a powerful time right now. Absolutely. So it is a powerful time. We got a new moon. We got sun conjunct the new moon tonight, and we have Mercury in Aries. So new moon in Aries, sun in Aries, and Mercury. Okay, here comes what's his name? He's going to make his appearance here. Here he comes. Are you coming up here? Okay, here comes Jasper. Say hi to everybody, Jasper. There's Jasper. Conjunct Uranus. Good job, Sally. The Uranus conjunction. Excellent. You know, Uranus was trining, has been trining Trump's ascendant for what, the last couple months? Maybe that's been emboldening him. What, Jasper, what's your sign? What sign eats a lot of food? I think he might be a Taurus. I think he's a Taurus because he loves food. Don't you? Don't you? Yeah, Cancer does love food too. So you're going to do the show tonight? I don't think so. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so Uranus has been trining Trump's ascendant. But at the same time, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's also been squaring his natal Saturn in his chart. So Trump has been trying to placate the Saturnian, actually Cancerian mob that helped elect him, his base. And at the same time, with Uranus and Aries, and that's, by the way, transiting through his ninth house, which is foreign involvements. There's a real conflict there, absolute conflict. Let's punch up Trump's chart while I'm talking about this as we transition into astrology tonight. So let's do that. And here we go. Let's see what we got here, just to make sure that we get all the angles right. Yes, Jasper, I know. It's your time. I'm just living in it. Okay. Yeah, so Trump's Venus and Saturn in his 11th house, they're conjunct, and they're in Cancer. So, and I've talked about this before, and Cancer really does represent his base. Cancer, when you think "Make America Great Again," right? When we hear that phrase, what are we thinking of? We're thinking about a time when America was great. And that's the nature of Cancer. Cancer is always looking back. Cancer's predisposition is sentimental. You know, it's like, oh, those were the good old days. Do you remember when? Do you remember when? That's the nature of Cancer, because Cancer is a water sign, and water is memory retentive. So when we get into Cancer and we go back in time, what are we doing? We're accessing the memories of the past. Scorpio is not like that at all. You know, Scorpio is memory retentive as well, but Scorpio is much darker and deals in realms that are not as easily accessible as Cancer. So and I talk about this on my course, but I have, you know, very clear kinds of like symbols for each of the water signs. And I think that they're very appropriate. So when you think of Cancer, you should be thinking about creeks, ponds, wells, you know, very small like bodies of water that are either running through your backyard or adjacent to your home or beneath the surface of your home, because those small bodies of water are accessible. They're accessible. You're either bringing it up from a well or you're going to go out and put your feet in it. It's very Cancerian. Okay. When we think of Scorpio, it's lakes. It's really big lakes, deep lakes, like Lake Baikal or Lake Shasta, lakes that or Loch Ness that they haven't really plumbed the bottom of, and big raging rivers like the Nile or the Amazon or the Mississippi. Those are very scorpionic because of the force that is moving through those bodies of water. And then when we get to Pisces, it's all about oceans and seas. But Pisces is not the little pond, just 1,500 yards away from 1,000 yards, 500 yards away from your home. That's not Pisces. Pisces is deep. It's profound. It goes into other areas that we have no clue about, right? Like, so if you go into the depths of the ocean, they have these things called the azoic zones, and they're so deep that people can't even travel there. That's how deep they are. Because if they do, for the most part, the submarines will burst. Will burst like hot beer cans on a hot day. You leave them out too long, right? So they have to send down these unmanned probes. I think James Cameron got pretty deep, though. I think he got pretty close. And when you go down into the azoic zone, also known as the benthic zone, you see all these very strange creatures. They're all living off of these deep sea vents. So that would we would assume that the deep sea vents represent a whole nother kind of deeply oceanographic reality. So that's the nature of the ocean. It's like it's deep, 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 and then there's beyond the ocean or beneath the ocean. And to me, that's very Piscean. And we can even align this with the three houses. The fourth house, Cancer, water, and it's all right there, right? It's all right there. It's the thing that makes up the everyday experience. And that's why when we think about Cancer, and we think about Cancer in terms of its retentive quality and looking backwards, we're looking back at those times that we associate with our family or some kind of emotional resonance that puts us in a particular place and time, and that we think fondly of that experience. It's very Cancerian. So when you look at Trump's chart, he's got Saturn and Venus conjunct in Cancer in the 11th house. Like, I think being in a relationship with Donald Trump would be, whether it was now or at any time in his life, I think it would be kind of a disaster. Like, I aside from all the jokes, I mean, let's just say that this is, Donald Jones. Like, this guy would have a hard time having a relationship. And I'll tell you why. Because if you look at his 7th house, he's got Pisces on the descendant. Actually, he has Aquarius last degrees on the descendant. 29 degrees Aquarius on the descendant, which means that his 7th house is all Pisces. Well, the 7th house is going to determine the nature of how this person relates in a one-to-one setting. So if he has 29 degrees Aquarius, that's actually kind of a big deal because, number one, it's fixed. We're dealing with a fixed degree. We're dealing with an anaretic degree. And then we have all that Pisces, this sort of, this chamber of Pisces that's just welled up in the 7th house. So people that have a 7th house Aquarian descendant, there are a couple things that go along with that. First of all, there has to be some kind of autonomy with Aquarius in the 7th house. Like that person wants some degree of autonomy in their life and whoever it is that they share their life with. That's the nature of it. Because Aquarius needs some freedom, it needs some autonomy, it needs to move around. It doesn't necessarily want to be tied down to one person. That's the nature of it, right? Then we get into the ruler of Aquarius, which is Uranus. And Uranus will always bring like strange shit. I mean, look at what happened just recently with Stormy Daniels. All of a sudden, boom, there she is. He had a relationship with her. It was an unusual relationship with her. And now it's being exploited to the max by the people that want to make his life hell. Which is kind of funny. And again, I'm not sitting here, I'm not banging the drum for Trump, but you just go back and look at all these other presidents and like having an affair with a stripper, not even a stripper, porn stars, that's mice nuts compared to some of the stuff that went on with Bush and Obama and Clinton. I mean, this is garden variety nonsense. But it's it's part of the program. It's going on. It's it is the pincer effect. So having that descendant at 29 degrees, there's going to be weird stuff that happens, strange disturbances, unusual kinds of outcomes, or unusual kinds of bursts in the pattern of relating. And then we have Pisces in the 7th house. And that's almost as equally as difficult as Aquarius in the 7th house. Because Pisces is what I call Pisces miasmic, because it's everything. And so when you get into the 7th house, it's like there's no boundaries. There's no boundaries in the 7th house with Pisces. It's all very fluid. It's, there are victims, there are scapegoats, there's intense bonding, there's deception, there's deep flow, there's soul connection. I mean, all those things that get entangled in Pisces, they all show up there. So Trump's got Neptune going through his 7th house. And what's that going to do? Well, it's going to bring up all these Neptunian, pieces in his relationships, deception, illusion. It's all happening. And Neptune is in square with Trump's Uranus at 17 degrees. Where's Neptune right now? Is it around 15 Pisces? That's a Neptune-Uranus square. So he's got Uranus in the 10th house. It's public life. Squaring off against Neptune in his 7th house, relationships. So here we go. We have the kind of the disturbing factor of Uranus squaring off against Neptune in the 7th house. It's, it's these tawdry revelations that are taking place in this house of relationships. And relationships are, the 7th house is, the person that you go to sleep with at night, or sometimes it's your business partner. That's one-on-one, intense one-on-one relationship. So Trump is not going to get out of this for a while because Uranus moves so slow. And eventually, what about, he's going to go through a really tough time. And when Uranus gets to about 20 degrees, which is going to be 2 years from now, it's going to square his sun. And then he's going to be going through the Saturn opposition. I mean, these are big time transits. The Saturn opposition is kind of a reversal in life, or a major change in one's direction in life path. And, that opposition happens basically at 14, at 44, and then at 74. And every one of those oppositions, there is a reordering of the individual as it relates to the Saturnian issues in their chart, in their life, their father, their social structure, their career, their legacy. So he's got the Saturn opposition that'll be happening, and that's going to be big, And he's also going to have that Pluto-Saturn opposition going on. Wow, I don't know. I don't know. This could be. I think the next couple of years are going to be pretty significant for Donald John Trump and the rest of the country as it relates to that. So when we see the Venus Saturn conjunction again, this comprises his electorate. Okay, so what do we have when the missile attack hit with Uranus also trining his natal Mars, trining his ascendant, and that's going to be in his 9th house, which is what? Foreign involvements. It's not local. It's not the 3rd house. It's not around the block or down the street or around the corner. That's the 3rd house. We're talking other countries. But it's also been in square with Saturn and Venus. So there's also this action that's taking place. And if you have been watching the last 48 hours and how, first of all, I couldn't help myself, but I watched Alex Jones on Friday night and I couldn't change the channel. I mean, it was like mind-blowing. I mean, first of all, he was drunk off his ass. He was totally drunk off his ass. Yeah, and it was like watching a kid, and the kid had somebody had just told the kid that Santa Claus doesn't exist, that Santa isn't real, and Jones was not railing at Santa, but the people that, or the person that told him that Santa wasn't real. I mean, it was a major meltdown. It was highly entertaining. Don't get me wrong. Like watching somebody who's drunk off their ass, really. And here's the thing. I mean, he crossed some boundaries on that show that are they're indelible. They will be there forever. Forever. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him. Because in a weird way, he actually won some people over on Friday night because he got off the Trump train. Now, I'm going to make a transition here. And I want to talk about the chart for what happened at 4 a.m. in the morning on Saturday in Damascus, Syria, because I think it's really noteworthy to try to wrap our heads around this. Okay. So when I look at this chart, what is the predominant thing that jumps right out at me? Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's the ascendant. And the ascendant is in Pisces. Okay. And then we have Neptune at 13 degrees just off the ascendant. It's an 8-degree orb. Pretty much conjunct. So just that alone, to me, is interesting. Well, why is it interesting? Well, first of all, we're going to judge this event from 2 different cardinal points. We're going to judge it from the midheaven because that is what the world is seeing. And we're going to judge it from the ascendant because there's another level of observation and objectification of the event. And Neptune, if you look at it at 13 degrees, is in square with the midheaven at 14 Sagittarius. So we know with that midheaven that in Damascus, Sagittarian influence is going to be paramount. So again, what is Sagittarian influence? Well, it's other countries. It is other cultures. It represents people from abroad. It's philosophy. It's law. It's religion. But primarily, it is out there, right? It is out there, unlike Gemini, which is around us and kind of in there. So predominantly, this is what we're seeing at the top of the chart is 14 Sagittarius. And then how we're identifying this event is what? We went to Syria because of gas, right? gas. It was chlorine gas. And on my Friday show, what did I talk about in terms of, hold on a second. You know what? I got the wrong year here. I apologize. For some reason, this came up as the wrong year. Let me get one more year here. It's going to be very similar. My bad. It's Mercury retrograde. What can I say? All right. We still have Neptune, and we still, in the first house, it's at 15 degrees. My apologies. And then we have Sagittarius at 14. So we still have the Neptune midheaven square. Okay. All right. Just keep that in mind. So what are we talking about? We're talking about gas. Chlorine gas. This is what set everything in motion, is gas. And on my Friday show, I talked about Pisces as symbolic of gas, an arbiter of gas, anything that's connected to fluids, liquids, gas, right? That's all Piscean. Pisces rules all fluids, all liquids. Pisces rules, I gave you like the sort of the different versions of water. Pisces rules them all. Because theoretically, it all flows into the ocean, right? And Pisces is the ocean. The 12th house is the ocean of the chart. So when we look at that Neptune square to the midheaven, can we get a real handle on this event? I don't think so. I really don't think so. I don't think we can really understand what happened in Syria, but clearly it's a very emotional kind of event. And with Pisces on the ascendant, like the event itself is going to impact people in a very specific kind of, well, not specific, in a multivariate kind of way. So let me break it down. When that happened, I was like, my heart is heavy. Look, my heart was heavy for other reasons too. It was a strange collusion in time for me, or collision in time, and the collusion of events. But just hearing that we had sent missiles to Syria, I was like, well, why, my heart's heavy. Why are we doing this? So I had my own Piscean kind of reaction to it. Although I didn't get online and, start crying like Alex Jones. That was intense. But, I try to be more objective with these things as I possibly can be. Sometimes it's a bit difficult because we all get drawn in emotionally. So I put a few posts up on Facebook and then I kind of retreated. And then the next day I started to get some emails from people. And some of the emails were to the effect of that this was Trump in France, Trump, US, France, May, UK. And what they were really going after was they were going after an ISIS chemical plant. And that this one chemical plant had all these nasty chemicals and toxins, botulism, all kinds of stuff that it was making. And one of the people that was on the board of that plant was Jerry Brown, who's the governor of California. It was a big fuck you to Jerry Brown, right? Like, haha, the one state that is taking on Trump, and looks like it could be split up into 3 states, possibly. So I looked at that, and like, okay, well, this is some QAnon material. And people love the QAnon stuff. And I'm learning from the QAnon thing. Don't get me wrong. I'll pick up stuff. But I still have not co-signed on the whole QAnon or any of the Anons. I just haven't done it. And there are a lot of people that are like, they just keep doubling down and doubling down and doubling down. And I don't know. I'm not sure that's really healthy, but that's just me. Okay, so now there's all this information. Well, this is what the deep state did, and this is what the deep state wanted. No, I'm sorry. I take that back. This was Trump and Macron and May taking on the deep state by wiping out this chemical plant. And that Russia was in on it and Assad was in on it. They all let it happen. That could be. It could totally be. But then again, it may not be. And this is the difficulty with trying to judge this event. It's really funny. It's like these major events recently have either had Pisces on the ascendant or Pisces on the midheaven. We go back to Parkland, the midheaven was Pisces, and Chiron was very close in Pisces to the midheaven. Here we have Pisces on the ascendant, cardinal point. So it's very difficult for us to really determine in a lot of ways what really went on and who is behind it. It's very difficult. And if you come out and say, well, I don't believe that. I don't believe that really they were taking out this. It was all pre-planned and they knew exactly what was going on, and Assad and Putin were on it. And you say, I don't believe that. Then what's going to happen if you're on the sort of the alt-right side of things, the QAnon followers, well, I've seen this on Twitter, they'll just shoot you down. I mean, they're almost becoming as bad as the liberals in terms of their zealousness. It's like, well, fuck you. Get off the Trump train, you weak ass motherfucker. We don't need you. QAnon, hashtag QAnon forever. It's like, I mean, they're becoming almost as unbending, as fascistic as the progressives on the left. Instead of saying, hey, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. Let's try to untangle this together. This is what QAnon is saying. But we always have to trust ourselves and use our discernment. You don't get that. At least I'm not seeing it. What I'm seeing is that if you're not a true believer, get off the bus. I just think that that's dangerous. I think it's dangerous. Sorry. And I'd love to throw down. It's like, oh man, Trump is really playing the 5D chess thing, and look at what he's doing. And he's just, messing with all these other. But let's be clear here. Let's be clear. Mike Pompeo, John Bolton. Okay, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, John Bolton. These guys are dyed-in-the-wool neocons, and they're planning these strikes. They're planning now what's happening in terms of foreign policy, what's going to go on in Syria, the Middle East, North Korea. These guys are now in the navigator seats. And I don't know if you remember, but John Bolton was one of the main architects of the Iraq War, and he was around during 9/11. And he has very, very strong ties with Israel. And apparently Israel was part of the coordination of the attack, which again is not really being communicated all that clearly. So again, what are we looking at? We're looking at the Pisces ascendant and Neptune squaring the midheaven. By the way, I believe John Bolton is a Sagittarius, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just find out. He could be late Scorpio. Let me just find out John Bolton. Here we go. November 20th. So he's late Scorpio. November 20th, 1948. And so he began his tenure as National Security Advisor on April 9th. And then 4 days later, we're hitting Syria. He didn't waste any time, did he? Not at all. But here's another thing. I've actually seen people talk about, well, did we even really hit anything? Because you'd think we'd see all kinds of footage, cell phone footage. Did we even really hit anything? I'm just throwing that out there. Just because I think it's important to address it with this Pisces rising, Neptune in the first house, squaring the midheaven. Okay? I do. Let's look at some other aspects of this chart. We had the Sun-Uranus conjunction. Sun was at 24, and Uranus is at 28 degrees. That's an impetuous sun, right? I mean, that's like make things happen. It's explosive. It's willful. It's dynamic. And up in the the 11th house, we have Saturn, Mars, and Pluto, and they're all conjunct pretty much. It's a bit wide, but Saturn does conjunct Mars, and then Mars conjuncts Pluto. And the 11th house is groups, organizations, media, social media, mass media. But to me, I mean that this is kind of like a coalition. You know, this would be maybe the UK, US, France, whoever else might have been, Israel. So these are your 11th house players because you're dealing with Capricorn. And to me, this is kind of inclusive. And then of course we have Jupiter up in the 9th house again, out there, you know, foreign countries, expansion, and Jupiter is in Scorpio and it's retrograde. So it's actually the highest planet in this chart. But going back to those three planets, we have war, violence, aggression, Mars, Saturn, government, Pluto, death, destruction, transformation. They're all there. They're all hanging out, squaring off against Sun, Uranus. Well, we have the Pluto-Sun square. That's an intense square. A Pluto-Sun square. That's very powerful. Very, very powerful. Like, you know, explosive kind of powerful. And then we've got Moon in Pisces and Chiron also. There's a lot of Pisces here. A lot of Pisces. And they're both in the first house. And that moon is at the end of Pisces. It's 29 degrees Pisces. So it's anaretic Pisces. It's the final degree. And then the next day it moves into Aries. So it's a very fascinating degree with that. And it's got that Chiron conjunction. And it's, you know, that's kind of bleeding heart stuff. You know, the Moon Chiron conjunction in Pisces. You know, is that the exploitation of what theoretically happened and using that as prima facie evidence? Here you go. Look what happened. Look at these kids. I saw this piece by a doctor. It was just a kind of a brief summation. He was looking at these kids who were supposedly the victims of the chlorine gas, and the EKG like plugs on them were completely wrong. Like they were not done by somebody who knew anything about EKG. You know, so whether or not, again, that's getting into the Piscean ascendant of the event. What the hell is really going on there? I don't think anybody really knows, to be quite honest with you. I really don't. You know, and as much as, you know, the QAnon people think that they've got the inside track, and maybe some of that is true, you can't really understand this event. So what would be the best thing to do? Well, I think probably the best thing to do is to not be emotional about it. And I know that sounds, well, isn't that robotic? I don't think so. You go to the other side of the chart and there's Virgo. What does Virgo want to do? Virgo wants to get into information. Virgo wants facts. It wants analysis. It's not engaged in this, you know, this Piscean kind of, you know, blur fest in the first house. You know, squaring off against the midheaven. That's not Virgo's energy, or it's not the astrological DNA for the sign. So I don't know. I think it's really hard, really, really hard to judge, you know, what went on Saturday morning at 4 a.m. And here's another little tidbit. If you look at the elements, there's a lot of fire, there's a lot of earth, and a lot of water. But there's no air in this chart. So what does that mean? It means that there's like no objectivity. There's no perspective. There's no detachment. And the air signs, are like, look at where Aquarius is. It's in the 12th house, so hidden. So are we going to get kind of the Aquarian world media model? Are we going to see all kinds of, buildings on fire and people running around and fire engines? No, we're not going to see that. Not at all. And I haven't even seen any real local video. Maybe there are people out there that have. I haven't. But even this, there is one little bit of air. It's the South Node, and it's in Aquarius. So again, let's look at the chart. Try to understand the event through the chart, because there is no clear path to understanding this event. And even with the midheaven at Sag, right? The midheaven at Sag, that's it's zealous. It's ideological. It's fiery, but it's fiery in the sense that we got those sons of bitches. That's Sagittarius in a lot of ways. But on the other side, a lot of people on the right side of this equation were not having it. Ann Coulter, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, Michael Savage. I mean, they're all on the other side of this thing. And the flip side of that Sagittarian zealotry is cynicism. So I just think this is a difficult event to really wrap our heads around. Really, really, the strongest kind of aspects are the Venus trine, which is at 17 Taurus, to Mars, and to Pluto. And how does that like manifest? It's hard to say. Are people going to? Is that? Is this about resources? Because when we talk about Venus, we talk about resources, right? Why don't you go stand over there for a while? Now, there's another thing that we can do. Okay, so this was about 9 p.m. Central Standard. So I think it was around 10 p.m. Washington time, if I'm not mistaken. So why don't we just change the place, and let's change the time. So let's go to April 13th, not 14th, but April 13th, and let's go to 10 p.m. And I'm pretty sure it's 10 p.m. 10 p.m. And we're going to change the location to Washington, D.C. And let's look at the Washington, D.C. chart for this event. See where things are showing up. Here we go. Okay, so it's a bit different here. All those Piscean planets are down in the 4th house, which is home, correct? So if we look at Washington, D.C. as being like the home of the country, because in many cases it is. So the 4th house in this chart would be the home base of the home of the country. And so there's all those Piscean planets hanging out in the 4th house. And that would be everybody that lives inside this country, to be honest with you. I mean, because that's how this chart works, right? It's the home. It's the people that live inside of it, the 4th house. So all those Piscean planets are down there, and we're all trying to sort through. The populace is trying to sort through this from a Piscean perspective. And then we have all those Capricornian planets that are in the 11th house, which could represent the coalition. They're in the 2nd house. So we're dealing with resources, and we're dealing with, basic fundamental values, metals, money, okay? And then the highest part of the chart here, planetarily, is Venus in Taurus. And then we have Jupiter on the ascendant in Scorpio, which is interesting, right? I mean, so from Washington's perspective, what would that look like? To me, this is about resources. Like what happened there, I don't think had to do with this is a resource move. When there's Jupiter and Scorpio on the ascendant, we're dealing with a heavily loaded second house. This is a resource move. Maybe it's gas, maybe it's oil. This is a resource move. So whatever happened at 4 o'clock in the morning is I think it's a precursor for something that has to do with resources, because the planet is scrambling for resources right now. Maybe it's genie oil. Maybe it's that pipeline that goes out to Tardis. But Jupiter on the ascendant in Scorpio is expansion, right? Wants to expand. So there's an expansion element coming from Washington with this event. And Scorpio's other people's money. Scorpio is soft resources. The second house is hard resources. There's Saturn, Mars, and Pluto. That would be my take here. And if you look at the midheaven, it's at 3 Virgo. So probably very well planned out, thought out event on their part, right? With Virgo in the midheaven. And then, of course, the 9th house is Leo, which is, again, it's out there, other countries, other cultures. But Leo's dominant, right? It's the sign of the king in the 9th house. So Trump and his son, I think, is right there at the 7th house, 8th house cusp on this chart. It's right there at the cusp. So we'd probably read it for the 8th house. And the electorate, or, the people, that's Cancer. And we're in the 8th house. And so Trump's electorate planets, Venus, Saturn, and Mercury, they're all buried in the 8th house in this chart. It's hidden, it's tucked away, shadowy. And the 8th house is a fixed house. So there's going to be extreme repercussions. There's going to be extreme opinions. Because when you get into fixity, it's black and white. It's very hard to blend shades of gray. It's not impossible, but at least initially, it can be extreme in black and white. Okay, so what did we do? Well, we looked at the event from the place of the event itself in terms of the time. Then we changed the time and we changed the location, and we looked at it from the center that guided and directed the event. Now, if we wanted to, what we could do is we could use both these events and we could overlay them and create a synastric relationship between the two of them. Or we could combine them and create a midpoint composite between the two of them. That's another way of looking at these events. We're not going to do that tonight. And maybe you could play with it on your end once you figure out how to do it. It's very simple. And remember, if you're going to do this, you're going to enter in the information, make sure that the event is going to be either a male or a female, because AstroDeans won't allow you to create a midpoint composite chart from it. So act as if they're two individuals. And then you can look at, and I'm going to do this as part of my website. I'm going to write up a piece on this, and I'll play with the synastric juxtapositions of what happened in both places at different times. So actually, probably what will happen is we'll probably have to do what'll be the midpoint. It would be the midpoint composite, okay, because they're so close together. It would have to be the midpoint composite based on reference point, which was another way of doing this. So anyway, you can use an event from two different places, and you can look at them from two different perspectives. Okay. All right. So let's get into the chart of the moment and see what we got going on there. Let's go back over here. Let's go home. I just think it's going to be very difficult to get any kind of real information about what happened based on, the chart. I mean, it's clear. It's like, Neptune square the midheaven. Does anybody really know? I don't know. Maybe those people in Washington know, but who knows? Okay, so let's go to let's go home here. Come on, I'll come back. Okay. So again, just to be clear, probably the best way to do a comparison between the two places would be midpoint composite reference place. Reference place. It'll be close because everything's really close, but the reference place will be able to determine something a bit more. Okay, so here we go. Chart of the moment. We have Sun conjunct Moon at 26 degrees, Aries. So this is a great time to start something. Really, really great time to start something. I joined a gym today. That was my Sun Moon conjunction. Was joining the gym because I want to get back into shape. So if you want to, and we have the Uranus conjunction in there as well, 28. So tomorrow the Sun is going to be at 27. The Moon will get there. So we're looking at a really, really, really tight conjunction with the Sun and the Moon with Uranus. That's kind of explosive, isn't it? And the Mercury's there just kind of, trailing behind. But Mercury now is direct. Hallelujah. How about that? I guess if you're going to have Mercury direct on tax day, it'd be probably a good day for it to go direct, don't you think? More than likely. But this is a great time to start something. I think the best time to start planning is the new moon in May. Is that right? That's so 30 days from now is like a good time to get your plants in the ground with that Taurus new moon. But Aries is action, and Aries is will, direction, the fulfillment of will, the volition of will. So again, over the next 24 hours, maybe you started something off today. This is a great time to initiate something and to take responsibility for your emotions in a lot of ways too. This could be a really good time for some kind of ownership. Yeah, I did this. This happened. I made these choices, or I didn't make these choices. And with the Sun Moon conjunction, it's like, okay, what do I want to do? Well, I want to move forward. This is a great time to move forward. Those final degrees of the Pisces moon on Friday night, those were like, that was that moon was on Chiron, which has been opposing my sun for the last year. And man, I was going through some heavy emotions on Friday night. And they weren't just related to what happened in Syria. There's other stuff going on in my world. And it was a very intense. You get to those final degrees of Pisces. And it almost feels like, what's the word I'm looking for? It almost feels like it's the end of a story. Well, it feels like it's the end of a kind of an epic novel in some ways, but in this case, not necessarily a great one, because it's opposing my sun. But that's the nature. There's a culmination in those final degrees of Pisces, and then there's the end, and then we move into the new path of Aries. So every time, we get to that balsamic moon in Pisces, right around this time of year before it goes into Aries, it's a very powerful moon. It's an incredibly emotional moon. I don't think there's any more balsamic moon than the final degrees of Pisces. Maybe Cancer, because Cancer has a really hard time of letting go. But Pisces is right in there. And the thing with Pisces is that it's everything. So if you're looking for a fresh start and a clean sweep, this would be the weekend to do it and move forward. And Uranus would add a kind of radical energy or radical impetus to do something quite different than you've done before. So Mercury's going direct. It doesn't get out of the shadow for what, like another 15 days. Because I think Mercury went retrograde at 19 degrees. So it doesn't get out of the shadow for another 15 days. But this has been a pretty benign Mercury retrograde for me in some ways. None of my shit broke down. Well, although my car did break down very early on in Mercury retrograde, and it got fixed. Like, guy showed up and fixed it. He's great. But other than that, it hasn't been too terrible in that realm. We got Venus at 19 Taurus. I love Venus and Taurus. I think it's a great place for Venus. And there is a real gentility and a softness and certainly a sensual quality with Venus and Taurus. And we have a Venus-Mars trine going on right now with Mars at Capricorn at 16 degrees. A couple days ago it was closer, right? I think about 4 days ago it was much closer, but still in trine. And Venus-Mars trines are great. You know, masculine and the feminine, and it's very structured and kind of to some degree driven with Mars and Capricorn. So if you're an artist, this is a great time, you know, with a Mars Venus trine. You know, or even if you're not an artist, you can do something kind of creative or crafty, or you know, that's very emblematic of the Mars Venus trine. It's also kind of a good time between the sexes with the Mars Venus trine. We have Jupiter in Scorpio, and we're going to have a Venus Jupiter opposition. That's interesting. Venus Jupiter opposition, that'll be in a couple days. I think that's a test. Venus Jupiter opposition feels like a test because Jupiter is bounty and it's largesse, and it's in Scorpio retrograde. And that's, you know, it's other people's resources, other people's money. It's, you know, to some degree, it's charisma and sexuality and power. You know, the Venus opposition, it almost feels like a bit of a test there. You know, like, where are you when it comes to those? It's almost like, who are you when people aren't looking? You know, that's the Venus Jupiter opposition. You know, if you're somebody who, you know, tries to get away with something, or let me reframe this. If there is an opportunity during a Venus Jupiter opposition, and you think that you can get away with something because somebody else isn't looking, think again. Think again with the Venus Jupiter opposition. Also, you may look at like the reality of relationships versus what you think you can get out of them. It's another aspect of the Venus Jupiter opposition. Do you align yourself with somebody because they're powerful and maybe they can help you get a promotion, or they have money or whatever? Or do you align with them because of Venus, you know, which is grounded and stable and solid and supportive in Taurus in a lot of ways? There's also the potential for an infusion of kind of Jupiter and Scorpionic energy into a relationship. That's possible. That's possible. Saturn's at 9 degrees. So we got a lot of earth going on, a lot of fire and earth. There's no, you know, we don't get any air until the moon moves into Gemini, like what, around Thursday. So boys and girls, there's no air in the air. I guess that's kind of a holdover from Friday night, right? So it's very hard to be objective without any air in the chart in a lot of ways. Saturn's at 9 degrees, and I guess what are going to have in about five days at Mercury Saturn square in Aries. Watch out for that. Thursday, everybody needs to pay close attention to their vocal cords on Thursday with that Mercury Saturn square. Really good application of the Mercury-Saturn square is writing, keeping your head down, using your brain to, work, maybe work a little extra. That's not a bad application of the square. What you want to watch out for is being explosive and popping your mouth off with a Venus-Saturn square. That would be pretty indicative. I mean, that's going to be interesting because it's not just us and what's going on in our charts, but that's going to be in the world. So, when we think of Saturn, we think of governments, corporations, politicians, presidents, and we have this Mercury Saturn square coming up later this week on Thursday. That'll be an interesting day. But I would say on a personal level, if you're angry and you got to work something out, I'd say go work out. Unless you can really be in control of that flame. Be in control. If you can be in control of the flame, then you can let it out. But what happens in most cases is once you start to let it out, you got a forest fire. Okay. Let's see what else. Neptune's in Pisces, 15 degrees. We talked about that. There's not a lot happening with Neptune's. Let me look. Well, Mars is actually in trine with Neptune. So is Venus. Mars is a little bit closer at 16. So you get into Mars trines with Neptune. That's creative. That's really creative. So this could be a very creative time. That's good. And Venus, it's getting wider. The Venus trine with Neptune was about 4 days ago. 4 days ago, yeah. So that's creative energy, and Mars is moving forward, and that's going to move out of that orb. It's pretty tight. It's still 1 degree. So about 5-6 days from now, Mars is going to move on. We're going to get into that Mars transition to Aquarius, and then that Mars Aquarius retrograde. That's going to be real interesting. That's later on. Let's see what else we have. We have Pluto at 21, Capricorn, and we have Mars at 16. So we're going to have that Mars-Pluto conjunction. I talked about that. That's a big one, right? That Mars-Pluto conjunction. Let's get into that. That is a big aspect right there. Let's see. All right, Mars, Pluto. All right, so we're in April, so it's 21. So that's on the 26th. And it moves into orb right around the 22nd. So is that Earth Day, April 22nd? So just set your clocks for April 22nd. I guess we could even, I talked about this last week. Thank you. That's a heavy time. That is a really heavy time. That is the those are the sacrifice days to Molech. Where it's like from the 15th through the 20th, 21st. Then we have the Mars conjunction with Pluto. Man. Wow. So Mars finally moves on. The 20th, let's just say 23, and that's not until May Day. It's at 23. It's still going to be, in orb with Pluto, and Pluto actually goes retrograde on the 24th. So, Mars will be it's right there. So Pluto's going retrograde on the 23rd. My bad, the 23rd. And then we have Mars at 19 right there on the 22nd, right? 19 on the 23rd. Pluto retrograde, stays retrograde for a long time. I think it comes out until what, when? Pluto doesn't go direct until, where are we? October? September. Let's see. Yeah, it goes direct on the 3rd of September. So Pluto's going to be retrograde from the 23rd of April to the 2nd of September. That's almost most of the year. And it goes all the way back to 18 degrees. Oh boy. Oy vey. It's a long time for Pluto to be. I guess it's not. I mean, whatever. This Pluto in Capricorn is like way too long for me. I wish we'd had more Pluto in Sag. I enjoyed that. This is my first house. So when we look at Pluto retrograde, I mean, I think that from a mundane perspective, you know, we're looking at those Plutonian or Capricornian institutions, governments, banks to some degree, corporations, and retrograde might actually be very interesting. You know, we might be able to pull some things back and actually see what the hell is going on. We're having more of that, but what happens is now we're getting flooded with all this information constantly, and it's almost like too much to keep up with. And some of it is actually valid and vital and real. Some of it's red herrings. You know, some of it's like spoof and fake news. And by the way, you get fake news coming in a lot of different directions. It's not just from one side. So it's interesting that we're having all of these pieces that are, you know, being unveiled, but sorting through them is not always easy. Maybe it'll get a bit easier when Chiron finally gets out of Pisces. But Pluto retrograde to me, especially at this point in time, feels like we're going to get maybe a bit more of this Plutonian revelation around these Capricornian institutions. I sure as hell hope so. I mean, I'm still holding out for the universal gotcha moment, the universal aha moment, where both sides of the left and the right just go like this. That's what I'm holding out for. And that there's just kind of this universal, you know, hands in the air, like, well, you know, you were right. Well, you were right. Yeah. Okay. Let's hug it out. Let's shake it out. Let's try to create something new out of this thing. That's really what I'm holding out for. Will it happen with a Pluto retrograde? Who knows? But at the very least, we're gonna see some of those Plutonian revelations happen. And retrograde is like what happened before. That's the nature of retrograde. Things come out. Things pop out. Now, we could take this back to Trump's chart if you want to. Which is probably not going to be great for him. Let me go back to his chart. Because he has, let's see, is it Saturn? This is Saturn at 21. Let me just check here. Okay, so his Saturn is at 23. So the Pluto-Saturn opposition is not going to happen to him until what, 2020, right? Let me just go in here. Give me one sec. Give me 1 second here. From the 2020. Yeah, so in January 2020, Pluto goes to 23. Just check here, hold on. 23 Capricorn on the 21st of January. And that's when it opposes Trump's Saturn. I don't think he's going to make two terms. It's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. Not with that Pluto-Saturn opposition. Saturn opposition. I don't think it's going to happen. By the way, I had heard, I was listening to a show last night, somebody who's a very pretty good researcher, that Trump is actually completely bankrupt, that he doesn't have nearly as much money as people think he has. Like everything is completely leveraged. Like he has those properties, but the banks own those properties. Like he only owns those properties in name. And apparently he was living off of his reality show salary for quite a while. Anyway, I thought, wow, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Maybe that's one of the things that's going to come out. Again, I'm not anti-Trump, and I'm certainly not like, a hardcore, fuck you, Trump or die person. When he was running for office, I was excited, and I was excited because of the energy. And I thought, I'm like, whatever happens with this guy, we got to just stay in touch with this energy because he's just, the carrier wave. That's what was exciting for me. It's like, wow, look at all these people. They're waking up. And, and he was doing some interesting stuff around, breaking some interesting little pieces of news. And we had WikiLeaks. And that was a really interesting time. And a lot of people got red pilled during that time. And I think it's really important to stay with that, to be honest with you, to stay with that energy. And that's the way it always was with me. Let me get into the chat room and just see how everybody's doing. Okay. Hey, there's Don. Hi. Any thoughts on the Barbara Bush, R. Lee Ermey death alignments in Syria and Coachella weekend? Ermey dead, Barbara not. Well, Art Bell died. We should talk about that a little bit. Pluto is so slow. Art Bell died on the 13th. Just put some shallot in my mouth. I have some of that stuff in my. I have some shallot. Red pill is a hell of an aftertaste. Yeah, Art Bell. Yeah, Art Bell died on what, Friday the 13th? Wasn't that a trip? Holy shit! Friday the 13th. So Maurice says that what I've heard as well. Barbara just terminated continued life prolonging treatments. Okay, pea-sized portion. Marlon, yeah, just total. So Marlon, I have the shallot resin, just to let you know. That's what I have. Art Bell changed our lives, didn't he? Art Bell totally changed our lives. Changed my life. I'll never forget the first time I heard Art Bell. I was coming down from Oregon. It was one of the first Sunday night Dreamtime shows he had. And he had Preston Nichols on. And I'm like, this is the first time I heard Preston Nichols too. And Preston Nichols was part of that whole Montauk, Philadelphia experiment thing. And basically from Oregon to California, it blew my mind. Totally. And the Area 51 caller, I know, that's crazy. There are people that have said that caller is actually David Wilcock. Have you guys heard that? That's actually David Wilcock making that call. I don't know if it is or not, but it's a good internet rumor, to say the least. It's interesting about Art. He was very dark. Art was a Gemini, right? He was a Gemini. And, when Art left, when he left Coast to Coast, for a lot of really weird reasons, and he was kind of like dealing with some real darkness. Like his wife died and had some weird stuff going on with his son. But then he tried to come back. And that was about 2 years ago. And everybody was like really excited. He was going to have a show on Sirius. He got shot at. Yeah. And he was going to have a show on Sirius. And then he just stopped and it didn't work out. I mean, for whatever reason. And I don't know the inside baseball around it. But I was thinking about that today. And It's almost as if like when you stop something, when you leave something, it's really hard to go back. Like I think it's very difficult to return to something that you already did. And in very rare instances, does it ever work out? So that's how I see what happened with Art when he wasn't as successful. Anyway, I mean, that guy's probably having a, grand adventure wherever he is, whatever he's doing. Let's check out Barbara Bush's chart since James brought it up. Let me see if I can find her. Let's go Barbara Bush. Let's check her out. See what's happening. See if I can punch her chart up here. Barbara Bush, also known as the daughter of Aleister Crowley, right? So we got an A birth time. Let's see what we got here. Okay. So, Sag rising, 1 degree. And let's see, we always want to track Pluto. Well, she's going through the Pluto-Pluto opposition. Actually, she went through it. She's got Saturn opposing Pluto right now. It's interesting, Pluto-Mars. Where's Mars? Yeah, so she's going through the Pluto-Mars opposition. She has a Mars-Pluto conjunction. It's wide. Pluto at, 12 degrees, and then Mars at 19 in her chart in the 8th house. And that's the house of death and sex and transformation and obsession and shamanism, the deep underworld. So Pluto's at 21. So Pluto-Mars opposition. That's interesting. And then we have what else going on? Where's Neptune in her chart? Let's see. She's got Uranus at 25, Pisces. So Chiron has been on her natal Uranus for almost the last year in the 4th house. To me, that'd be neurological. What's going on with her? You get Chiron Uranus conjunctions. That's electrical. That's neurological. Pisces faculties, right? Could be some form of dementia. And then let's see, Neptune is up in the 9th house in Leo. And that's at, let's see, Neptune is at 20. Well, she's got Pluto. Also, she's got Black Moon Lilith. Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. She has Black Moon Lilith on her Mars at 19 degrees. And Pluto. So, this whole Crowley thing actually could make some sense. Because there's this room, and if you look at Barbara Bush and Crowley, they actually look alike. But what happened was that Barbara Bush's mother went to Paris, and she hung out with a friend of hers and her friend's boyfriend. And her friend was American. I'm not sure what the boyfriend's nationality was, either American or English. And Crowley was there in Paris, and they were all hanging out together. So a baby who was it? It was her, right? She came out right around the same time that she could have been impregnated in Paris by Crowley. And if you look at that 8th house, which is, it's a sex house, and it's a house of regeneration. It's also Scorpio. She's got Black Moon Lilith there. That is like the dark secret of the mother. And that's an occult house, the 8th house. That's interesting. Crowley's a Libra. So he was like October 12th or 13th. So the sun would be kind of at the edge of the 10th and the 11th in Crowley's chart, or in her chart rather. So she's on life support. Let me just check in. Maurice says she's on life support. Is that right? Barbara dies now. Would bet Poppy will go on Mayday. Yeah, he's not far behind, is he? God, I can't wait till a lot of these, these fossils start to check out. No, it's okay. It's okay, James. It's like when is Henry Kissinger going to leave? That's another one. No, it just seems to have stopped treatments as far as I know. Okay. Well, so she's still alive, right? She's still alive. Is that correct? He's a clone. Bush is a clone. Yeah, I would absolutely. I'm with Lynn on that. Don't you think they are supernaturally alive, Tanya? Okay, so Lynn brings up a great point about Old Man Bush, who I think was cloned. Absolutely. Kissinger, I don't know if he's cloned or not. I don't know if he's cloned. I don't think Kissinger's cloned. I think GHWB is. That's because, again, when I watched him during the Gulf War, it was like there was one guy and then there was another guy. So, yeah, Art Bell, man, he had some good late night moments. But the thing about Art is that he treated his callers like dicks. I'm sorry, he was like mean to them. A little bit. I think Art was not always the most patient with his callers. He was a little hard on them. Anyway. Okay, so we've been jamming here for what, an hour and a half, right? Yeah, I would say Art will miss, but Art's been missed now for about a decade. And George doesn't even come close to Art. Sorry, not even. And George has a great voice. Don't get me wrong. I love George's voice, but if you want to fall asleep at night, put on Coast to Coast when George is on. It's a perfect antidote for restlessness. Okay, why don't we get on out of here? And thanks everybody for showing up. And he's pretty good, though, I think. George is pretty good. Does this video cast on Sunday nights usually start at 8? Yes, it does, Maurice. It does. George, I think George is naval intelligence, to be quite honest with you. I mean, you look at his background, and he's connected in. I think George is a gatekeeper. That's my 2 cents. Hey, everybody, thanks for showing up. I'll come back again next Sunday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we'll see where we are. And in the meantime, just use your X-ray vision. Okay. Yep. X-ray vision, because we need it. X-ray vision and high beams. Okay. You can find me at robertphoenix.com. Check me out on Facebook. And then tomorrow, we're going to get into more of what happened over the weekend on 15 Minutes of Flame. All right. God bless you all. I love you all. Thanks for showing up. It's always a pleasure being here with you. Have a good night.